Hello. Today we're going to look at multiplying spring greens. So what is spring greens, I hear you say? Well, it's often used as a generic term for bits that you've cut off other plants in the garden. But there is actually a plant called spring greens, and here it is. It's actually related to the cabbage, and actually quite closely related to wild cabbage. Now, why is it interesting? Well, first of all, the taste. It's got a superb cabbage taste. If you like cabbage, this is the plant for you. But also, it's a perennial, and it can last anything up to 5-7 years. So you plant it once, and it will just keep producing year after year during that period. Now, what other interesting things should we know about spring greens? Well, I've written them down on a bit of paper because I can't remember all of them. But here are a few of the certainly nutritional facts about spring greens. Apparently it's full of things like vitamin C, B9 and E, full of fibre, full of provitamin A, and also various minerals like potassium, calcium, magnesium and sulphur. The other thing to know is it's low in calories, so if you're dieting, again, it's a good tasty plant to have in your diet. Another thing which I find very interesting with this plant is how hardy it is. As I said, it's perennial, but it can go down to, in the winter, minus 15 degrees C, that's 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And here in France, where I live, we've just been through a drought heat wave, and the temperature has been bouncing around between 35 and 40 degrees centigrade. That's between about 95 and 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And I've neglected this plant completely because I don't really want to eat cabbage in the summer. And it's just started to rain again in the last few days. And here it is, bouncing back beautifully. Now I've got a lot of this plant in the garden, but it's so good, I want some more. So let's look at taking a cutting and multiplying our spring greens. So, how do we take our cutting to multiply our spring greens? Well, it's very simple. On the plant, there are little branches which come out from the main stem. There are a number of main stems, and these little branches are what we need as a cutting. What we're going to do is we're going to remove them and put them in a little pot. Simple as that. So we have our pot with a little bit of soil, or preferably some good soil from your nursery, or a little bit of garden soil mixed up with some compost. And we are simply going to remove one of these little branches. So let's do that. There's one here. I literally remove it with my fingers like that. Now, before we put it in the little pot, we want to remove some of these leaves because it hasn't really got any kind of root system. Notice there's a little edge here, a little ear from the stem of the plant. That helps because that improves the amount of surface there is here from which roots can grow. But as I said, this is a very small cutting and it's got rather a lot of leaves on it. So what we need to do is actually remove some of these leaves with our fingers and leave maybe one or two like this. And simply, we take our little pot. Here I have a dibber, but you can just use a pencil or even your finger just to make a little hole here where we can put our cutting. Put our cutting well into the hole there. Make sure it's snugly in our little potting mix here, which is, as I said, very simply a little bit of potting mix from the garden centre, or soil plus compost from the garden, or whatever. And all we need to do now is water it and leave it in a nice bright spot, and ensure that we water it regularly, and that will produce our next plant. And when it's got to about so big, that's about, I don't know, 10 inches tall, about 25 centimetres, we can then simply take it out of the pot and plant it in the garden. So there, that's how easy it is to multiply our spring greens.